March 6, 1945. 3:47 p.m. Cologne Cathedral Square, Germany. The sight in the gunner's periscope fractured into a webwork of lines as Feldwebel Karl Hoffmann pressed his face to it, struggling to discern the strange outline materializing from the debris-strewn street. For 3 years, he had committed the shape of every American tank to memory. The high-slung Sherman with its 75mm pea-shooter, the Stuart light tanks which the Tiger crews dubbed toy Panzers, and even the seldom-seen jumbo Shermans with reinforced armor, none of which could penetrate a Tiger's front plate beyond 500 meters. Yet this was not any of those. "Das ist kein Sherman," he murmured into the helmet intercom, his voice betrayed by a tremor that was new to his crew. "That isn't a Sherman." Behind fractured glass, he could make out the immense barrel, longer and thicker than any American tank gun he had ever seen. The hull sat lower, sharper, its armor sloped and seemingly cast rather than welded. The turret was huge and oddly matched to the hull, as if someone had fixed a heavy anti-aircraft weapon onto a tank base. His thoughts raced over recognition guides, silhouette charts, and briefings from intelligence. Nothing was a match. Precisely 18 seconds from then, Karl Hoffmann and those with him would become some of the first German tankers ever to learn that America had finally produced something capable of destroying them at any distance, from any direction. 3 minutes prior, the Panther tank led by Wilhelm Bartelborth from Panzer Brigade 106 had learned this firsthand. That tank's 5-man team never radioed the identity of what had ended them. The 90mm M3 gun of the M26 Pershing had fired the opening shot. The armor-piercing shot raced at 853 meters per second, closing the 120 meters between adversaries faster than it took Hoffmann to shut his eyelids. The round crashed into the Panther's turret frontal armor. The 100mm thick plate, respected for bouncing Sherman shells in both France and Belgium, ruptured under the collision. The 90mm shell, charged with immense kinetic power, ripped through the crew area before it exploded. The arithmetic of Allied supremacy was being calculated not just in plans of battle, but in the raw numbers of production and frontline engagements that appended every belief these men held about their foes, their nation, and their mission. German dominance in tank combat was established in both metal and blood ever since the Tiger I had debuted at Leningrad back in August 1942. For 2.5 years, German heavy tank crews manned machines that appeared to defy the core tenets of armored combat. Their 88mm cannons could annihilate any Allied armor from over 2,000 meters away. Their plating, measuring 100mm at the hull front and 120mm on the turret, rendered them almost impervious to typical Allied tank weapons at regular fighting distances. The effect on morale was equal to their physical advantage. Battle-tested crews of Schwer Panzer Abteilung 506 spoke of a sense of indestructibility that came with maneuvering Tiger tanks. The numbers themselves were persuasive. The American M4 Sherman's 75mm M3 cannon could only breach a Tiger's forward armor at less than 100 meters, and that only with specialized shells and ideal alignment. By contrast, the Tiger's 88mm KWK-36 could penetrate a Sherman's front from 2,000 meters. Come December 1944, German tankers had evolved routine strategies that took full advantage of their superior engineering. They would situate Tigers and King Tigers as far out as possible, using their enhanced guns and vision to knock out enemy armor before the Allies could get into range. A lone Tiger often halted entire Allied movements. Most famously, at Villers Bocage in June 1944, SS Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann's single Tiger took out 14 tanks, 2 anti-tank guns, and 13 vehicles within under 15 minutes. Wittmann would fall in August 1944, months before the Pershing debuted, but this battlefield edge gave a significant psychological boost that reached far beyond combat. Allied tankers became afflicted with Tiger fever, regularly mistaking different German tanks for Tigers and reporting far more Tiger sightings than actually transpired. At the same time, German heavy tank teams cultivated an almost supernatural confidence in their own invulnerability, decorating their cannon barrels with kill markings reminiscent of fighter pilots. However, far from the self-assured tankers, 8,000 kilometers away at the Detroit Tank Arsenal, American designers had, beginning in September 1942, embarked on a secretive endeavor called T-26. Their efforts aimed to produce a vehicle that would dismantle the illusion of German tank superiority. The path to what became the M26 Pershing started with a sobering acknowledgement. American armored vehicle development had dangerously lagged. The M4 Sherman, which served as the central element of the U.S. armored divisions, had been conceived in 1941, a period when the German Army's most formidable tank was the Panzer IV, equipped with a short-barreled 75mm gun. By the time Shermans encountered Tiger tanks in Italy and Normandy, they were surpassed in all key areas: armor, weaponry, and operational range. The Pershing Development Initiative was an all-out push, bringing together 14 major firms, 300 subsidiary suppliers, and upwards of 50,000 laborers spread across 22 states. The Fisher Body Division of General Motors, previously manufacturing Sherman tanks at its Grand Blanc plant in Michigan, was ordered to swiftly convert its operations to assemble the new heavy tank. The required alterations were immense: novel turret casting processes, entirely reworked transmission systems, and, most importantly, the installation of the 90mm gun that before had only been employed in tank destroyers and anti-aircraft guns. The 90mm M3 cannon stood as a testament to American technological prowess. Derived from the proven 90mm anti-aircraft piece, it launched a 24-pound piercing projectile at velocities greater than 2,800 feet per second. The typical M82 APC shell was capable of breaching 119mm of armor at a distance of 500 yards, sufficient to penetrate a Tiger's front armor in a battlefield engagement. The advanced T-30E16 HVAP round, boasting a tungsten carbide core, could pierce 221mm of armor at the same distance, posing a threat to even the imposing King Tiger. This project operated under extraordinary secrecy. Employees at the Fisher Tank Arsenal believed they were constructing a modified Sherman model. Components were made in various locations to ensure no single team could discern the full blueprint. When the initial batch of 20 Pershings shipped to Europe in January 1945, they were described as heavy maintenance vehicles and hidden under canvas covers. On January 15, 1945, at the New York embarkation port, beneath the protection of darkness and stringent security, the premier 20 M26 Pershings were loaded onto vessels destined for Europe. Every tank was encased in waterproof material and disguised with inaccurate shipping identifiers. The tank operators selected for the mission had been carrying out their training in strict seclusion at Fort Knox since November and were bound to secrecy with the threat of court-martial. The 11-day voyage traversed submarine-patrolled waters. The Pershings were stored deep in the cargo holds behind stacks of standard Shermans, concealed even from the majority of the boat's own sailors. The crews dedicated the transit to memorizing German armor identification materials and reinforcing their fabricated cover story. They were supposed to be replacement crews joining ordinary Sherman outfits. On January 26, 1945, the Pershings made their arrival at Antwerp once more under the cover of night. Without delay, they were taken by specially designated trains to the 3rd Armored Division's maintenance zone near Düren, Germany. At this location, crews carried out their final readiness steps, and Major General Maurice Rose, the division's commander, personally delivered a briefing about the new weapon to all battalion commanders. On February 25, 1945, the initial 4 Pershings were allocated to the 3rd Armored Division as it advanced toward the Rhine. Each one was assigned to a separate task force and was concealed among ordinary Sherman units, with commanding instructions to steer clear of combat unless faced with German heavy tanks. The crews painted the vehicles in the standard olive drab, applying unit insignia to help them blend in, even though their extended guns and lower silhouettes stood out to observers familiar with tanks. German intelligence proved completely ineffective. Despite possessing one of the war's sharpest intelligence networks, the Wehrmacht was entirely unaware of the Pershing's presence. German leadership assumed the Americans had made quantity their permanent priority over quality, failing to imagine American manufacturing could turn to heavy tank production while still outputting Shermans. On February 26, 1945, near Germany saw the Pershing's first loss in combat. The T-26E3, called Fireball, was taken out by a Tiger I tank in an ambush at close quarters. The Tiger's 88mm shell hit the Pershing's gun mantlet, resulting in the deaths of the gunner and loader. Still, the Pershing underwent repairs and was put back into service on March 7, which highlighted American prowess in recovery and maintenance. In the following week, scattered intelligence reached German command reporting encounters with an unidentified American tank sporting a longer barrel and thicker armor than the Sherman. A Panther tank crew recounted being knocked out at 1,800 meters by a single round from an American tank they could not identify. Most alarmingly, every report included the same observation. The adversary's cannon appeared noticeably longer and larger than the standard Sherman 75mm gun. On March 6, 1945, the tank battle at Cologne Cathedral unfolded, destined to become the best documented armored duel of the Second World War, with photographs and film captured by Signal Corps cameraman Jim Bates. The morning saw German armored units positioning their last tanks in and around the cathedral square. Panther commander Wilhelm Bartelborth of Panzer Brigade 106 remained confident as the Americans drew near. The open expanse of the plaza created excellent lanes of fire, and piles of debris provided their tanks with partial hull protection. At 1,520 hours, Bartelborth noticed movement near the wreckage of the German Hotel. Using his periscope, he initially identified what he thought was a rare Sherman model with a longer gun. He told his gunner to open fire at 300 meters, which was point blank for a Panther's quick-firing 75mm gun. The Panther fired the opening shot, hitting the oncoming tank's frontal armor, but rather than punching through, the shell bounced upward, scattering sparks. Bartelborth had just 3 seconds to register this unexpected result before the answer came. Staff Sergeant Robert Earley, leader of the Pershing known as Eagle 7, had already lined up the Panther in his gun sight. His gunner, Corporal Clarence Smuyer, locked the reticle on the Panther's gun mantlet and squeezed the trigger. The 90mm projectile pierced straight through the Panther's turret face. The vehicle erupted into fire as stored ammunition detonated. The video footage taken by Jim Bates documents the subsequent events. Another German tank stationed nearby witness accounts conflict on whether it was a Tiger or a second Panther also attempted to return fire but was eliminated by the Pershing with one shot to the front. The battle continued for under 5 minutes, yet it clearly demonstrated American tanks could now equal German armor in terms of armament. The elimination of German tanks at Cologne Cathedral immediately sparked an intelligence emergency within the Wehrmacht. The Oberkommando West rapidly issued urgent orders instructing all units to report any sightings of new American heavy tanks at once, including comprehensive accounts of their features and performance. The reports revealed a sense of technological shock that German officers were reluctant to acknowledge. Several crews noted that American tanks equipped with 90mm class cannons and reinforced frontal armor were taking out Panthers and Tigers at distances greater than 1,500 meters. German personnel started calling it the long-barreled Sherman, not considering the possibility that it was a brand new American heavy tank. This confusion lingered for weeks, leading to tactical mistakes as German crews tried confronting Pershings utilizing anti-Sherman strategies. Panzerwaffe training systems found themselves overwhelmed and unable to adapt. Armored schools lacked any data concerning the new American tank. No identification charts had been made, and field manuals still assumed that American tank cannons were incapable of penetrating German heavy tanks from the front. By the middle of March 1945, approximately 20 Pershings were active in the European theater, and additional tanks continued to arrive every week. Although this total was minor when compared to the many thousands of Shermans deployed, the impact on morale was vastly out of proportion with the actual numbers. German tank crews, who had previously faced Shermans without fear, now entered each confrontation with trepidation. The statistics on tank kills only reveal part of this narrative. In the few skirmishes where Pershings directly engaged German tanks, they secured favorable outcomes. However, the fact that only 20 Pershings saw combat makes broader statistical analysis unreliable. What proved more important was the atmosphere of doubt. German tankers were unable to reliably tell Pershings apart from Shermans at long range, causing hesitation during every firefight. The figures regarding manufacturing were even more telling. By the start of 1945, Germany was finding it difficult to turn out 100 tanks per month, whereas American production plants had built 2,222 M26 tanks by the end of the war, the Fisher Body Grand Blanc arsenal alone accounting for 1,739 of those. Continued in roughly the next half of the original text, elaborating further on similar topics and narrative progression.